In the spring of 2006, on a quarantine island in the Venetian lagoon, an excavation reached the mass graves of the plague of 1576, and found, among the dead, a woman with a brick in her mouth. I was on that island. This is my testimony, about what we found in the earth, and about what we wanted the earth to mean. The boat still runs. Out from the northern edge of Venice, across water the color of unpolished pewter, to a walled island most of the city has never visited. Lazaretto Nuovo. I have made that crossing more times than I can count, and I have never once made it casually. 20 years ago I was young, and the island was a field site. Now I am what people politely call established, and the island is something else. It is the place where I learned the difference between what evidence says and what we ask it to say. I keep returning because of one object and one person. The object is a brick. The person has no name. This is a witness file. Mine. You should understand the island before you understand the find. From the 15th century, the Venetian Republic kept quarantine stations in its lagoon, outer rooms of the city, where ships and cargo and people waited out their suspicion. And when plague broke through anyway, as it did in 1576, in an outbreak that killed perhaps a third of the city, the islands received the dead in numbers no churchyard could have held. In 2006 I was part of a team excavating one of those burial grounds. Work like that is slow arithmetic. You do not dig for stories. You dig for layers. Near the surface, centuries of reuse. Below, the compacted stratum of an emergency, earth that had been opened and closed too many times in too few months. We knew when we had reached 1576 the way you know the weather has changed. I want to be precise about this. We were not looking for her. We were documenting a disaster. The record does not preserve a dramatic moment of discovery, and I will not invent one. I will describe what the record describes. Among the dead of the plague lay a woman, estimated to have been about 60 to 70 years old. In her mouth was a brick. I did not understand what I was looking at, and I want to keep that sentence, because it is the last honest moment before interpretation begins. A mass grave holds rubble. Jaws fall open. A brick can arrive by accident. Whether this one did is a question that has now outlived the excavation itself. The brick entered the record as an object to be measured, described, and argued over. It said nothing at all. The word came later. It came from paper, not from the pit. In the months after the season ended, I did what young researchers do, I read. Burial archaeology, plague mortality, the folklore of epidemic dead. And in the literature of Central Europe I met a German word I had never needed before. Nachsurer. The one who devours afterward. The tradition said this: when a village began to die, the first to die did not stay dead in the ordinary way. Under the earth, under the cloth, it chewed, the shroud first, then more, and every mouthful taken below was strength taken from the living above. The tradition even listed the signs: a body swollen instead of sunken, skin darkened instead of pale, linen hold at the mouth. And beside the tradition stood its quiet answer, that a body after death swells, that fluids rise and stain and rot the cloth where it touches the face. Ordinary decomposition, observed honestly, by people who had no other frame to put it in. I remember closing the folder and thinking, interesting, and far away. I was wrong about the distance. In 2010, the case was published in a forensic journal. The argument was careful, and it was bold. The brick had been placed deliberately, by a living hand, an intervention against a corpse believed to feed from the grave. The old fear, pressed into clay, surfacing in a Venetian plague pit. The paper traveled far beyond the discipline. Soon the case had acquired a name in the headlines, the Vampire of Venice. 2 years later, in the same journal, came the formal objection. A mass grave is full of rubble, the critics wrote. Jaws fall open in decomposition. A brick can arrive without any hand intending it. And the chewing dead belong to lands north of the Alps, not to the lagoon. The authors answered. The disagreement remained. For years I was asked to referee that argument. My answer has not changed. The argument has not closed. And this file does not close it. Strip away everything contested, and hold what remains. A woman. 60 to 70 years old, by estimate. She was buried in the plague layer associated with 1576, on a quarantine island among its dead. And when we reached her, 430 years later, there was a brick in her mouth. Now the other list. Her name, not in the record. Her house, her work, her family, not in the record. Anything she did, anything she was believed to be, any word she ever spoke in her own defense, not in the record. The parent file to this one holds the count in 3 phrases, and I have never improved on them. No name in the record. No listed act. No defense. Here is my testimony, the part that is mine alone. I wanted the brick to speak. I wanted it with an intensity that surprised me. In the months after the paper, I would take out the finds photographs and feel the story assembling itself on its own, the terrified burial detail, the old woman someone remembered wrongly, the hand that pressed clay against a fear it could not name. It is a good story. It explains the object completely. And I could feel, physically feel, the sequence running. Artifact becomes pattern. Pattern becomes explanation. Explanation hardens into certainty. I stopped at the last step. Not because I am more disciplined than the villages were. Because I had read, by then, what the villages did with their certainty. They looked at an order of dying they could not bear to leave unexplained, and they filled the silence with a rule, and the rule chose a person. I looked at a brick, and I began to fill its silence with a person too. For centuries. One method. The same temptation. Years have passed since the excavation. The published record remains, and so does the argument. It quiets for a time, then returns whenever someone asks what the brick meant. What does not change is her position. Every account we build, ritual or rubble, fear or accident, is built over her silence. She was talked about in her own century, if the boldest reading is right. She has been talked about in mine, without pause, since the excavation reached her. In neither century has she said a word. The parent file ends with a rule: the first dead was not buried wrong, only buried first. Let this one end beside it. This woman was not found guilty. She was only found. I still take the boat. I stand where the grid used to be, and I practice the hardest sentence in my profession. We do not know. She could not answer. The least we owe her is to stop answering for her.